This video is not a substitute for the original book. We recommend reading or listening to the full version whenever possible. This is a concise summary, crafted for those moments when time, energy, or access to the original is limited. James Clear. Atomic Habits. The invisible power of small habits. Imagine a plane taking off from Los Angeles, headed for New York. But as it climbs into the sky, the pilot adjusts the nose of the aircraft just 3.5 degrees south. Barely a twitch on the compass. No one on board notices. The plane flies steadily east. Hours pass, and when it finally lands, it's not in New York, it's in Washington, D.C. A minor shift at the start, a difference of just inches, created a completely different outcome. That's what habits are, not grand decisions, not once-in-a-lifetime events, but quiet adjustments in our daily flight path, barely noticeable in the moment, yet massively influential over time. James Clear didn't set out to become a best-selling author. He wasn't trying to change the way the world thought about behavior change. In fact, there was a time he could barely move at all. A baseball accident in high school left him with broken bones, a shattered face, and months of recovery. He was stripped of routine, of identity, and had to rebuild everything from scratch. But he didn't rebuild with big resolutions. He didn't promise to become a champion overnight. He started small, really small. Making his bed every morning, lifting a toothbrush before lifting a weight, showing up for practice even when no one noticed. One habit stacked upon another. And over the years, those tiny routines compounded into something extraordinary. Not because any one action was monumental, but because they never stopped. We tend to believe change must be dramatic. If I just had more motivation, we think. If I could just flip a switch. We dream of overnight success, transformation in 30 days, the viral before and after. But here's the hard truth. Success is never a single event. It's the result of your system, not your goal. Think of it like an ice cube sitting on a table in a cold room. The temperature is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. You breathe, you wait. Nothing happens. You heat the room. 26 degrees, 27 degrees, still nothing. 28 degrees, 29 degrees, 30 degrees, and suddenly at 32 degrees, it begins to melt. You didn't see the change coming, but every degree mattered. Progress is like that, invisible, until it's not. What James Clear wants us to understand is this. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And your systems are built on the foundation of your habits. Let's take two people. Both want to be healthy. One decides to go all in, cuts carbs, joins a gym, buys supplements. The other just decides to drink a glass of water first thing in the morning. 3 months later, who's healthier? It's hard to say. But a year later, the second person, the one with the simple habit, is still doing it. They've added a walk after lunch, a salad at dinner, sleep at the same time every night. The first person, burnt out by week 3. This is the hidden power of small habits. They stick. They don't require you to become someone else. They build the person you want to become. There's a term in atomic physics, latent potential. The idea that energy can be stored, dormant, accumulating, until one final trigger unleashes something huge. That's exactly how habits work. We expect immediate results, but real change is delayed. You go to the gym for a week and don't see abs, so you quit. You write 5 pages and nobody reads them, so you stop. You meditate for 10 minutes and still feel anxious, so you give up. But habits are not about what happens today. They're about who you're becoming every day. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Write a sentence, you're a writer. Do a single push-up, you're an athlete. Read one page, you're a reader. It's not about the vote count, it's about showing up to vote. That's why tiny changes are not trivial. They're identity shifting. Each small habit whispers, "This is who you are now." And enough whispers turn into a voice, and that voice shapes your life. So when people ask, "How do I change my life?" the answer isn't motivation. It's not intensity. It's consistency. It's brushing your teeth every night. It's opening the notebook every morning. It's walking instead of scrolling, stretching instead of snoozing, listening instead of reacting. Small, boring, invisible. Until one day you look up and realize you've changed. Because the truth is, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies through interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. And just like compound interest, the most powerful outcomes are delayed. So if you don't see results today, good. That means you're doing it right. You're building the system. You're trusting the process. You're putting faith in the smallest of things. Because a 1-degree shift today, that's a new destination tomorrow. #Meta. Identity first, outcome later. Change isn't just about doing, it's about being. You don't become successful by chasing outcomes. You become successful by becoming the kind of person who naturally does the things that lead to those outcomes. Let me tell you a story. A man walks into a room. He's offered a cigarette. "No thanks," he says, "I'm trying to quit." Now, another man, same situation. He's offered a cigarette too, but this one says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Both refused, but the difference is everything. One still sees himself as a smoker trying to change. The other has already changed who he believes himself to be. That's the power of identity. Most people focus on outcomes. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to write a book. I want to be more confident. But outcomes are the surface level of change. Dig deeper and you find the systems behind those outcomes, the daily actions, the structure of behavior. Deeper still, at the root of it all is identity. The story you tell yourself about who you are. You can try to change your habits, but if your identity stays the same, the change won't last. If you see yourself as someone who hates exercise, you might force yourself to go for a run once or twice, but it'll always feel like a fight. If you believe you're a disorganized person, you might buy a planner, but deep down you'll sabotage the routine because your brain doesn't want to betray who you think you are. But the reverse is just as true. Change your identity and everything else begins to follow. You don't need to say, "I want to read more books." You say, "I am a reader." You don't chase a result, you embody a role. Every habit you build is not just a behavior change. It's a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Each time you sit down to write, even if it's just a paragraph, you're voting, "I'm a writer." Each time you go for a walk, no matter how short, you're voting, "I'm someone who moves." Each time you speak calmly in a stressful moment, you're voting, "I'm a patient person." And the more votes you cast, the more the identity becomes solid, stable, real. This is why fake it till you make it doesn't always work, because it skips the internal shift. Real, lasting change starts with a belief, "I am this kind of person now." Then you act in alignment with that belief. Over time, those actions reinforce the identity. And that identity makes the actions easier. It becomes a loop, a self-reinforcing cycle. Be, do, become. But how do you start? How do you shift your identity when you've spent years believing something else? You start small, not with a grand declaration, but with a quiet decision. A whisper inside that says, "From now on, I choose differently." You don't have to believe it completely, not yet. You just have to act like it's possible. James Clear calls this identity-based habits. You're not setting goals for results, you're designing habits for becoming. For example, don't set a goal to run a marathon. Build the habit of putting on your running shoes every morning. Become a runner. Don't aim to write a bestseller. Build the habit of opening your laptop every day. Become a writer. Don't dream of six-pack abs. Build the habit of drinking water and eating mindfully. Become someone who honors their body. The key isn't doing it perfectly. It's doing it repeatedly. Every repetition is a reinforcement, a confirmation of identity. There's something freeing about this. You don't have to chase motivation. You don't have to fight for discipline. You just act in alignment with who you've decided to be. And over time, that identity becomes your default. You are no longer trying to be organized. You are organized. You're not pretending to be healthy. You are healthy. You're not forcing yourself to be creative. You are creative. Not because you told yourself, but because you proved it, one small habit at a time. We often wait for a breakthrough, a big moment of clarity. But the truth is, identity is not something you wait for. It's something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice, habit by habit. And the most powerful transformation isn't when others see you differently. It's when you do. Because once your identity shifts, your life does too. The habit loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. Picture this. You're sitting in a quiet room. Your phone is on the table. Suddenly, buzz, the screen lights up. Without thinking, your hand reaches for it. Your eyes scan the message. Your thumb starts to scroll. You didn't plan it. You didn't even decide. You just reacted. That's a habit, not a decision, a reflex. A loop your brain runs without permission. Habits, James Clear explains, aren't random. They follow a pattern, a structure, a loop. It begins with a cue, a trigger, a signal, something that grabs your attention. Then comes a craving, a desire, a tension your brain wants to resolve. That leads to a response, the behavior, the action you take. And finally, there's a reward, relief, satisfaction, or pleasure that teaches your brain, do this again next time. Cue, craving, response, reward. A loop. Silent, automatic, powerful. Let's break it down. Imagine you're walking into your kitchen. The scent of fresh coffee fills the air. That smell? That's your cue. You suddenly want coffee. That's your craving. So you pour a cup. That's your response. And then, warm, rich, energizing. That's your reward. Now your brain has a new instruction. When you smell coffee, get some. It feels good. And the loop begins to embed itself. Do it enough times, and it becomes automatic. The same applies to every habit, good or bad. You don't just eat when you're hungry. You eat because you walked past the kitchen. You saw chips on the counter. You were stressed, bored, tired, alone. Those are your cues. And over time, your brain learns this feeling equals that behavior equals quick reward. The loop tightens. It becomes harder to resist because your brain isn't asking for logic, it's asking for relief. But here's the hopeful part. Once you understand the loop, you can change it. You can manipulate it, shape it, rewire it. You don't break a habit by sheer force. You break it by breaking the loop. Change the cue. Interrupt the craving. Make the response harder. Remove the reward or replace it. It's like coding. Your brain runs on behavior scripts, and you're the one who can rewrite the program. Take the story of a man named Alan. Alan used to check his phone within 30 seconds of waking up, every morning, no exceptions. Cue, the alarm. Craving, that little dopamine jolt. Response, scroll. Reward, distraction. Novelty, escape. He tried forcing himself to stop, but it never lasted. So instead of fighting the habit, he redesigned it. He bought an old-school alarm clock, left his phone in the living room, put a book on his pillow. Now the cue was the alarm. The craving was still mental stimulation, but the response was reading. And the reward? A slower, calmer morning, and pride for choosing differently. The habit didn't disappear overnight, but the loop was cracked. And that's how real change begins. It's not just about willpower. It's about architecture. Want to eat healthier? Make the cue obvious. Leave fruit on the counter. Make the craving attractive. Pair it with music or a podcast. Make the response easy. Pre-cut snacks. Make the reward satisfying. Track the streak. Want to stop binge watching at night? Remove the cue. Unplug the TV. Interrupt the craving. Leave the remote in another room. Make the response difficult. Log out of your streaming account. Kill the reward. Replace it with something deeper, like sleep or a book that fills you. Every habit lives and dies by this loop. And here's what's wild. Your brain wants to run on autopilot. That's how it saves energy. That's how it survives. So it's not your fault you keep falling back into old patterns. It's just your brain doing its job. But when you become aware of the loop, you take the wheel. You stop reacting. You start choosing. Because the truth is, every habit, no matter how small, is a loop waiting to be rewritten. If you can identify the cue, you can disrupt the craving. If you can change the response, you can rewire the reward. And if you can repeat the new loop again and again, it becomes who you are. So the next time your phone buzzes, or the fridge hums, or a thought tugs at your mind, pause. Ask yourself, what loop am I in right now? And decide if it's a loop worth repeating. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. If building a habit feels like pushing a boulder uphill, you're doing it wrong. Because good habits don't have to be battles. In fact, the best ones, the ones that stick, feel almost effortless. Not because you're more disciplined, not because you're more motivated, but because you've designed them well. James Clear offers a blueprint, 4 laws that shape human behavior. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Simple? Yes. But when woven into real life, they become transformative. Let's bring them to life. 1. Make it obvious. Picture this. You walk into a room. It smells like lavender, soft light. A yoga mat lies unrolled in the corner. A playlist is already whispering calm piano notes. Do you feel like stretching? You probably do. That's the power of environment. It doesn't ask you to remember your habits, it reminds you. James tells us, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And your systems begin with visibility. You want to read more? Leave the book on your pillow. You want to floss? Put the floss on top of your toothbrush. You want to drink water? Keep a full glass on your desk, always. If a habit is out of sight, it's out of mind. But if it's in your line of sight, again and again, it becomes natural. Environment design beats self-control every time. 2. Make it attractive. We do what feels good. That's human nature. So if you want to stick with a habit, make it something you look forward to. Take the story of Maya, a woman who hated going to the gym. No matter how many times she signed up, she always quit by week 2. Until one day she made a deal with herself. She could only listen to her favorite audiobooks, the ones she was obsessed with, while working out. Suddenly, the gym became a portal to another world. Cardio wasn't punishment. It was story time. Temptation bundling, James calls it. Pairing something you need to do with something you want to do. You need to run? Pair it with a juicy podcast. You need to clean the kitchen? Do it while blasting music. You need to answer emails? Light a candle. Sip your favorite tea. If you enjoy the process, you repeat the process, and repeated actions become identity. 3. Make it easy. Forget no pain, no gain. Forget grinding. Forget pushing. The key to building a habit is reducing friction. You don't need to run 5 miles. Just put on your running shoes and step outside. You don't need to write 1,000 words. Just open the document and type 1 sentence. You don't need to meditate for 30 minutes. Just sit still for 60 seconds. Because every habit starts with a gateway behavior, the smallest possible version of the thing you want to become. James says, standardize before you optimize. Don't try to improve it yet. Just make it doable. Ridiculously doable. That's why the 2-minute rule works. Any habit can be started in under 2 minutes. Want to start journaling? Just write 1 sentence. Want to get organized? Set a timer for 2 minutes and tidy 1 drawer. Want to learn a language? Open Duolingo and do a single lesson. It's not about willpower, it's about reducing resistance. Start small, shrink the barrier, and momentum will do the rest. 4. Make it satisfying. The final piece of the loop, and maybe the most underrated, pleasure. Your brain needs a reason to come back, a win, no matter how small. Because if a habit feels good after you do it, you'll want to do it again. This is why tracking your habits works so well. Crossing off a day on a calendar? That little X is dopamine. Checking a box on an app? That's reinforcement. Telling a friend you didn't skip today? That's pride. James reminds us, what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. So stack your rewards, not with junk food or impulse buys, but with meaning. Celebrate your consistency. Acknowledge your effort. Feel the joy of showing up for yourself. Because when a habit feels satisfying, it becomes part of your identity, not just something you do, something you are. Here's what it comes down to. Make the cue obvious. Make the craving irresistible. Make the action easy. Make the outcome rewarding. That's not a to-do list. That's a behavior blueprint. A system that rewires who you are from the inside out. And once those 4 laws take root, your habits stop feeling like chores. They start feeling like home. How to break bad habits without willpower. Alongside, we often think bad habits are broken with force, with effort, with white-knuckled resistance. But here's the truth. You don't break a habit by fighting it. You break it by making it invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. In other words, by reversing the pattern. Let me show you how. First, meet Daniel. Every night, Daniel told himself he wouldn't stay up late watching YouTube, and every night, he failed. He brushed his teeth, he climbed into bed, he picked up his phone just for a second. 3 hours later, he was still there, scrolling, watching, hating himself for it. Sound familiar? Daniel didn't need more willpower. He needed less friction in the direction he wanted and more in the direction he didn't. So he did something simple. He deleted the YouTube app, left his charger in another room, set his phone to grayscale, and bought a $9 alarm clock. Suddenly the cue was gone, the craving was muted, the response was harder. And the reward? Well, it turned into sleep and peace. That's how habits fade, not by wrestling with them, but by designing them out of your path. Let's break it down. James Clear gives us the inverse of the 4 laws for breaking a habit. Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, make it unsatisfying. Let's walk through each one with stories, not bullet points. 1. Make it invisible. Imagine you're trying to stop snacking, but every time you walk into the kitchen, cookies stare you down from the counter. You don't eat because you're hungry, you eat because the cue is there. So what if those cookies were gone, or replaced with apples? What if the snack drawer was locked and the key was in another room? Habits need reminders to stay alive. Remove the reminder, and the habit begins to wither. Out of sight, out of temptation. 2. Make it unattractive. Bad habits stick because they promise pleasure. They seduce, they sparkle, they offer relief. But what if you rewired how you see them? James shares a powerful reframing trick. Highlight the cost, not the reward. Take smoking. Instead of craving the hit of nicotine, focus on the yellow teeth, the wheezing lungs, the aging skin. Take gossip. Instead of the thrill of being in the know, feel the weight of disconnection, mistrust, and guilt. Take mindless scrolling. Instead of numbing out, imagine the time you're trading, hours of your life that never come back. When you make the habit unattractive in your mind, it loses its shine. Thoughts shape desire. Desire shapes behavior. 3. Make it difficult. Every click, every swipe, every bite. These are all frictionless. But what if you added friction? Unplug the TV, delete the app, log out of the account, move the snacks to a high shelf, put your phone in another room. The harder it is to start the habit, the less likely you are to do it. Even a 10-second delay can change everything. James calls this habit architecture. It's not about control, it's about distance. You're not banning the habit, you're just making it harder to reach. And over time, the path of least resistance becomes the one you want. 4. Make it unsatisfying. Habits feel good until they don't. But the problem is, the consequences of bad habits are usually delayed. You don't gain weight after one cookie. You don't go broke after one impulse buy. You don't destroy trust after one lie. The damage is slow, invisible, quiet. So how do we reverse that? By making the pain immediate. Tell a friend your goal and ask them to check in. Use a habit contract. If you break the rule, you pay. Track your failures, not to punish, but to bring awareness. If every time you scrolled too long, a timer buzzed loudly. If every time you skipped the gym, you owed $10 to a cause you hate, would you still do it? Accountability adds emotion, and emotion, especially discomfort, rewires behavior fast. But the ultimate lesson? Bad habits don't need to be broken in dramatic fashion. They don't need to be attacked. They just need to be unplugged. One wire at a time. One cue, one craving, one tiny obstacle at a time. Because behavior is not destiny, it's just a pattern. And patterns can be redesigned. Quietly, strategically, sustainably. So if you've tried to change before and failed, it's not your fault. You weren't weak, you just didn't have a system. Now you do. And once you master the art of unmaking, you're finally free to build something better. Mastering the long game. Plateau of latent potential. There's a moment in every journey where things feel pointless. You show up, you try, you sweat, you wait, you do the thing again and again. And still, nothing happens. No praise, no visible progress, just silence, stagnation, frustration. This is where most people quit. Not because it's hard, but because it feels useless. But it's not. It's just the plateau of latent potential. Imagine you walk into a freezing room. It's 25 degrees. An ice cube sits on the table. You light a fire. The room warms to 26 degrees, then 27 degrees, 28 degrees. Still, nothing. You stare at the ice, no change. 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 31 degrees, still frozen. And then, at 32 degrees, the cube melts. Suddenly, instantly, visibly. But that 1 degree wasn't magic. It was just the tipping point, the reward for everything that came before it. That's what change feels like, invisible. Then all at once. You don't get in shape from one workout. You don't become fluent from one lesson. You don't build trust from one kind act. But stack the reps, stack the efforts, and suddenly the curve bends upward. Breakthroughs are not lucky. They're earned in the quiet phase, the phase no one sees, the phase you're in right now. James Clear calls this the valley of disappointment. It's the space between what you expect and what you actually see. You imagined results by now, but life hasn't caught up. And here's the trap. Because change is slow, we assume we're failing. But in reality, your habits are working, just not on your timeline. They're building, compounding, layering beneath the surface, like seeds underground, like water behind a dam, like pressure beneath a glacier. Progress is not always linear, but it is always real. Let's look at Trevor. Trevor was a quiet artist. For 7 years, he painted every day. No followers, no sales, no traction. Friends told him to quit, get a real job. But Trevor kept painting, kept showing up, kept posting. Then one morning, a collector from Berlin saw his work online. She bought 5 pieces, shared them. A gallery reached out, then another, then a magazine. In 6 months, Trevor went from obscurity to global exhibitions. Everyone called it overnight success, but Trevor knew better. It was 7 years of quiet, 7 years of invisible effort, 7 years of pushing toward that 32nd degree. This is the game. If you want lasting change, you have to make peace with boredom, with repetition, with long stretches of silence. Motivation might get you started, but discipline and systems keep you moving. And that movement, slow and steady, becomes unstoppable. Because once the curve bends upward, it bends fast. Compounding works like that. Let's be clear. Reading 1 page a day doesn't feel like much until you've read 50 books. Investing $10 a week won't change your life until it compounds into thousands. Choosing salad over fries isn't dramatic until your body transforms. Speaking kindly once won't heal a relationship, but hundreds of moments will. It all counts, it all adds up, and it all takes time. The work you're doing now, the tiny things, they are not wasted. They are stacking. James says habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies with time, So does behavior. So does character. So does identity. And just like with money, the earlier you start, the more powerful the result. But you have to stay long enough in the game for the compounding to kick in. You have to walk through the fog of nothing's working to arrive at the day when everything does. So if you're stuck right now, if you're doubting the path, if you feel like quitting, don't. You might be at 31 degrees, just one shy of the breakthrough. Stay long enough to see what happens next. Stay long enough to melt the ice. Building systems, not goals. Everyone wants results. We set goals like mile markers. Lose 10 pounds, write a book, launch a business, save $10,000. Goals give us direction, a place to aim. But here's the trap. Goals don't get you results. Systems do. Let me explain. Imagine two basketball teams. Both want to win the championship. Only one will. But both had the same goal. So what made the difference? Their system, their training, their recovery, their communication, their consistency. The goal was shared, but the process was not. Or take two students. Both want to ace the final exam. One crams for 3 days, drinks too much coffee, and burns out. The other reviews material every night, quizzes herself weekly, sleeps well. Who do you think performs better? Again, same goal, but wildly different systems. James Clear puts it bluntly, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals are outcomes. Systems are habits. Goals are destinations. Systems are the path. And when you fall in love with the path, you don't need the outcome to feel like you're winning. Let's go deeper. Goals create a when-I trap. When I lose 10 pounds, I'll feel good. When I hit 100K subscribers, I'll be proud. When I finish the book, I'll finally rest. But goals delay happiness. They put your worth in the future. Systems give it to you now. You feel progress daily. You feel momentum. You feel yourself becoming. James tells the story of a man who lost over 100 pounds. Not by obsessing over the number, but by obsessing over his system. Every day he drove to the gym. Some days he didn't even work out. He just built the routine, the rhythm of showing up. Eventually he stayed, then trained, then transformed. Not because of a goal, but because he built a life where that result was inevitable. That's the power of systems. They make success a natural consequence. Here's something else. Goals can actually limit progress. You hit the target, then what? You lose the weight and stop the diet. You finish the race and stop training. You publish the book and stop writing. Goals are temporary. Systems are sustainable. When you live by goals, life is a finish line. When you live by systems, life becomes a cycle, a rhythm, a practice. Let's say your goal is to run a marathon. A goal-oriented person might think, I have 4 months, I need a schedule, a time, a result. But a systems-oriented person thinks, I run every morning, that's just who I am. One is chasing a finish line, the other is becoming the kind of person who runs. Who do you think keeps going after race day? Systems are quieter than goals. They don't get applause. They don't show up in captions or hashtags, but they're stronger, deeper, more permanent. A system is brushing your teeth every night, not dreaming of white smiles. A system is sitting at your desk each morning, not just wanting to write. A system is grocery shopping on Sundays, not just saying, I want to eat healthy. So how do you build one? Start with this question. What kind of person would achieve the outcome I want? Then, become that person. If you want to be strong, ask, what does a strong person do daily? If you want to be creative, ask, what does a creative person make space for? Don't just dream of the finish. Build the behavior. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to predict the future. You just need to repeat a system that makes the future predictable. Fall in love with the process, not the promise, not the prize. The system is the success, and it's already in your hands. The habits of top performers. There's a myth we love to believe, that greatness is born, that talent is destiny, that some people are just wired different. But behind every world-class performer, every best-selling author, every peak athlete, there are habits, ordinary actions done with extraordinary consistency. James Clear didn't write a book about motivation. He wrote a book about architecture, how top performers build systems that carry them through boredom, fatigue, and pressure. Here's what sets them apart. They don't rely on motivation. The best don't wait to feel ready. They don't need inspiration to show up. They work, especially when they don't feel like it. Why? Because the action is automatic. It's baked into their system. It doesn't depend on mood. A musician doesn't wait for the muse. They play every day. A runner doesn't wait for perfect weather. They lace up anyway. A creator doesn't wait for viral ideas. They publish routinely.
Top performers have built habits that remove the choice. They don't negotiate with themselves. They just show up. They embrace boredom. Here's the hard truth. Success is boring. It's unglamorous, repetitive, quiet. But pros, they don't chase novelty. They fall in love with the process. They lift the same weights, practice the same lines, shoot the same free throws, over and over and over. While others chase hacks and highlights, top performers repeat the fundamentals until they become second nature. As James writes, the greatest threat to success is not failure, it's boredom. But boredom is a gift, because when you can do great work without needing it to be exciting, you've unlocked consistency, and consistency wins. They know when to stop. High performers don't just know how to start, they know how to recover. They don't burn out. They build in rest, reflection, and renewal. Why? Because habits aren't just about going harder, they're about staying longer. You can't win if you quit the game. So they design lives that are sustainable, not extreme. Atomic habits don't drain you, they sustain you. They track without obsession. Data matters. Feedback matters. But perfection? It's not required. Top performers track their progress, not to punish themselves, but to stay honest. They know that what gets measured improves, but they also know one bad day doesn't erase the pattern. They bounce back quickly. They don't let guilt snowball into shame. They return to baseline again and again. Because they're not chasing streaks, they're building identity. They recommit every day. The most powerful habit? Starting again. Top performers don't expect flawlessness. They expect resets. They fall off, then get up. They miss a day, then show up the next. James says, missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. So they protect the bounce back. They forgive fast. Recommit faster. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. So if you're wondering what it takes to reach the top, it's not magic, it's not genius, it's not perfect genes. It's 1,000 tiny choices, a dozen daily rituals, a lifetime of humble reps, atomic habits, small actions with massive returns, stacked, repeated, and refined over time. And that's the secret. You don't need to be extraordinary. You just need to be consistent.
Because in the end, greatness isn't something you chase. It's something you build, one habit at a time.